då gör du det underveis. Och då är det säkert att liksom lyssna rätt på texten.
Mulla on ollut siis 6 tuntia opetusta tänään.
Ai jaa. Sitten sulla on semmoinen olo, että voi riittää.
Miten se on materiaalikursiksi niin aineistoja käytännössä.
Okei.
Se on kauhean dialogista ja väsyttävää.
Niin joo. Kyllä mulla tulee jo niinku 1,5 tuntia opetusta, niin sitten on ihan semmoinen olo, ei pysty enää oikein ajattelemaan niin semmoinen päivänä. Kyllä se on sen verran kuormittava. Tai jotain, että ehkä sitten jos mulla ehkä joskus jää se sosiaalisuus niin päälle sit sillä, että kun sitä jaksaa tehdä, mutta sitten oikein niin se moodi johonkin lukemiseen tai kirjoittamiseen, se on liian suuri ero.
So it's 1:15 should be. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to this session of archaeological research seminar. Today we have a guest lecturer, Dr. Marko Marila, and he's currently postdoc researcher at the University of Linköping. And Marko received his doctoral degree in 2020, and the title of the dissertation was Introductory Notes to the Speculative Epistemology of Archaeology. And as the title says, the work discussed the role and possibilities of speculation in the history of archaeology and what archaeology could be. And in addition to this work on archaeological theory, Marko has published a number of articles and some co-authored works, books. One is titled Historical Perspectives to Post-Glacial Uplift Case Studies from the Lower Satakunta region, and it was published 2019 in the Springer Briefs series in Geography. And the other one, co-authored publication, is related to development of marine archaeological education in Finland, and it was titled Long-Term Degree Program, Success in Maritime Archaeology, and it was published 2020. So Marko is kind of very broad-minded in his topics, and his current research deals with the histories, heritage archaeologies, and arts of anti-uranium mining social movements in Finland and Sweden. And please, Marko, your turn.
Thank you, Visa. And thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to talk about my research. So, indeed, my background, just full disclosure, is in archaeology and history of archaeology and archaeological theory. But for the past 2 years, I've worked at Linköping University doing something quite different that was in my sort of like not in my comfort zone, so to say. When I applied to this postdoctoral position, and but nevertheless found it super interesting. So I work in a project called Nuclear Natures, and what we do in that project is we research the many ways in which nuclear power production is connected to natures and nature. What type of natures does nuclear power production generate and leave behind? But I will start with the title, From Bedrock to Deadrock. That was originally an autocorrect error, but it sounded so nice, like bedrock and deadrock. And to me, it sort of captures the whole cycle of nuclear power production and the nuclear fuel cycle. So basically, in order to produce nuclear power, the most common fuel for nuclear power production is uranium, which is embedded in the bedrock, dispersed in tiny quantities and like that's probably not the correct geological term, but diluted in the bedrock. So it's really hard to like take the uranium out of the bedrock. But then what happens is you have to refine that uranium through a very time-consuming and laborious project, so that it can be fabricated into these nuclear fuel assemblages that go into the reaction chamber in a nuclear power plant, and then through nuclear fission, it produces a lot of heat, which in turn boils water, which in turn produces spins a turbine that produces electricity. So that's basically the principle of nuclear power production, or electricity production in a nuclear power plant. But the ugly thing with nuclear power is that it also generates a lot of waste, and that waste, so the uranium, enriched uranium that went into the nuclear reactor has to come out, and in that process it has turned into highly toxic, highly radioactive waste. And so the question is, what do we do with that waste? How do we manage that waste? And how do we make sure that, because this is waste that is about to stay highly radioactive and therefore super dangerous to any living beings for tens of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years. So the idea is to, at the moment in many countries like Finland and Sweden, for example, the idea is to bury that waste deep into the bedrock, like 500 meters deep in the bedrock. And that sort of logic of waste disposal and isolation turns that bedrock into deadrock in this sort of poetic translation of this cycle. So we have bedrock, the mining part, the resource, the dream, and then we have deadrock, which is isolation, desolation. That's sort of the backdrop for this, for the whole dialectics between nuclear power production and also then its opposition that I'm going to talk about today. I just wanted to show this picture because earlier this year I went to the Ignalina nuclear power plant in Lithuania, and there's this huge storage facility with hundreds of these canisters that hold this highly radioactive nuclear waste. And this is from the virtual, so that there's a website where you can go around the nuclear power plant and the waste storage facilities. So this is a waste storage facility where the canisters filled with waste wait for the Lithuanian solution, siting for this deep geological repository. And when I saw this, so this is just but it looks exactly like this. This could be a photo of that place, but we weren't allowed to take photos there. So that's part of the deal. But when I saw this, my jaw just dropped to the floor. I couldn't say anything. It's the only time that I've witnessed or experienced this techno sublime, that the product of human energy consumption and energy production. It's there waiting to go into the bedrock and stay there for millennia, basically. And it's one of the most awe-inspiring. Not sure if that's but you get my point. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. But as then pertains more closely to what I have researched. So I'm not that interested in nuclear power plants or nuclear power production per se. So what I have researched during these couple of years is the sort of like social aspects of nuclear power, anti-nuclear like activism and anti-uranium mining activism. So, and as part of that, also a little bit about the history of. I have looked into the history of uranium production and uranium mining, because I want to understand the history of 70 years of uranium production in Finland in order to understand the anti-uranium mining movements, social movements. So this is a picture from an old uranium mine that was operational in eastern Finland for only a couple of years. And this is just to get the sense of the places and spaces that I've dealt with recently. So it doesn't look like this anymore. I forgot to include a picture of how it looks now, but it looks like a sand pit, basically, like a overgrown, ingrown, nature reclaimed sand pit, because it was filled in the 90s, because it keeps the radiation levels are higher in that area, so the radiation just keeps spreading into the surrounding nature. So that's why they filled the mine and rehabilitated the site. And that's an anti-uranium mining artwork from 2007. So this is what I'm going to be talking about today. So I have 3 case studies on how art has been used and how rock has been used in anti-nuclear and anti-uranium mining art. And these case studies are from Finland. I'm going to be talking about a reconstruction and public reveal of an anti-uranium artwork, anti-uranium mining artwork that we did this summer. And then in the course of this talk, I will also be reflecting on this art from an archaeological and also heritage perspective. So this is geographically, this is the sort of to get an idea of where we're moving, what we're dealing with. So the case studies come from southern Finland. These also, a vital piece of information, also corresponds with the hotspots of Finnish uranium mining. So since the 1950s, different mining companies have extracted uranium and refined uranium. The Paukkainvaara mine that you saw, it's located in eastern Finland here. There's another mining area in southern Finland, and those are sort of historically the 2 important sites or areas for uranium mining. And all this anti-uranium mining artworks loosely, or not so loosely, correspond with mining activities and also prospecting activities since the 50s until the 2010s. So this first example, the first case study is called Memo, and it has to do with a Finnish anti-nuclear association called, in English, Energy Political Association Alternative to Nuclear Power. It was founded in 1977. And this was a reaction to a siting plan for nuclear power plants. So in the early 70s, there were 2 nuclear power plants that were already being built in Finland. But in the early 70s, the Ministry for for trade and industry released a siting plan for like dozens of nuclear power plants in different parts of the country. This was the first time that a nuclear power plant was being like planned to be placed near the capital area in Helsinki. So this sort of like in the early 70s and this type of anti-nuclear politics didn't really exist because environmental organizations still saw nuclear power as like an alternative to hydropower and coal. So it was really the like first plans to place a nuclear power plant near the capital city that sort of gave rise to this this association. And shortly after its foundation, a subgroup called Green Mutant was formed within this energy political association. And the motivation for this subgroup was the challenges of managing nuclear waste. So by the early 80s, Finland had already 2 nuclear power plants in operation, and Finland was producing nuclear waste, which was being, at that time, it was being exported to Russia. But Green Mutant was not happy with all the like solutions of like dealing with nuclear waste, and this was also a time when Finland had already started planning for a cheap geological repository. So, as a sort of political statement, Green Mutant created memo. So it's a list of almost 30 people, their names engraved in the bedrock of Suomenlinna near Helsinki. Suomenlinna is an old fortress island from the 1700s, and nowadays it's a UNESCO World Heritage site, but it wasn't that in the early 80s. So what Green Mutant was, they carved the names of those people that they held responsible for introducing nuclear power in Finland in the first place. So basically names of industry executives, politicians who were favorable towards nuclear power, and this is what it looked like last year when I visited the site. So you don't really see that unless you know what you're like looking for. It's very easy to miss that, but it's still there, and it's a type of a shaming list. But the logic behind this memo from Green Mutant was that in the case that these people would like start destroying all the historical documents in order to like steer away from all these like responsibilities that come with nuclear waste, nuclear power production, namely the nuclear waste in this case. Then their names could be like found engraved in the bedrock, a type of like play on the materialities of like political remembering and assuming responsibility for political decisions. There was a second memo planned in the event that like Finland would continue investing in nuclear power, and in the case that there's no like successful solution to this problem of dealing with nuclear waste, they planned a second memo, and that would also they wrote in the early 80s that this memo would also include the names of those artists and like individuals of like cultural influence who have belittled the dangers of nuclear waste and spoken favorably about nuclear power production. in '86, of course, we know that like Chernobyl happened, and then that's basically when the need for this second memo, there wasn't need for this second memo because a lot of countries, Finland included, adopted this like and very critical approach towards nuclear power, and so it took until the early 2000s when Finland went back to like when this like the political atmosphere shifted again towards like favoring nuclear power. So between the like mid 80s and early 2000s, there wasn't also because politicians were mainly largely critical of nuclear power. There wasn't like a similar need for environmental and anti-nuclear organizations like this like Green Mutant and the Energy Political Association. So the Energy Political Association was basically eliminated, or like it stopped, quit functioning in the mid 90s, and then its operations were subsumed under like larger environmental organizations like Greenpeace. And so the second case study comes from Greenpeace. This is from 2010. It's called Memorial to Selfishness. And like the Green Mutant memo, it's also a shaming list of politicians. So Greenpeace Nordic put this up in 2010 when Finland, the Parliament of Finland was voting on investments in nuclear power. So there were three, a fourth reactor at the Olkiluoto nuclear power plant in southern Finland, a completely new nuclear power production facility in northern Finland, and then the enlargement of this nuclear waste repository that was being constructed in western Finland. So any member of parliament who voted yes on either one of these three decisions, governmental decisions in principle, got their name engraved in this memorial to selfishness. Itsekkyyden muistomerkki in Finnish. And what's like fascinating to me about this memorial is that it was put up in 2010 when nuclear power was seen in a completely different light than it is seen today. So quickly, I've talked to the people who designed this. I've interviewed them, and they themselves started like noticing only a few years after it was put up. They started noticing that people were like tagging it with pro-nuclear power graffiti. So, ydinvoima pelastaa ilmaston, nuclear power saves the climate, or CO2, 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 CO2. So, and now that's what it looks like now. It says ydinvoima on paras, smiley face, smiley face. Nuclear power is best. So to me, that's like as a mnemonic device. Like, so there's this original message: nuclear power is awful. There's waste we have to deal with, and these politicians like made a decision based on selfishness, and now it's being reclaimed by the very same politicians. For like, they have adopted memorial to long-sightedness or something like that. Like, we made the correct choice because, of course, you know what the like idea here is that, and Greenpeace has totally like shifted their idea on. They say that they wouldn't do this anymore, and Greenpeace in general have a very, how to put it, ambiguous attitude towards nuclear power, because nuclear power is seen as basically a green CO2 free mode of energy production. So there's this quick shift that happened shortly after of course in the 2010s this was already a concern, but so much has happened after 2010 that this is, so basically, like, my point is that it's an interesting piece of, it's an interesting memorial or a monument that continues to collect these sort of like shifting attitudes and ideologies on nuclear power. So the third example is actually a collection of examples, and it's an artist called Pessi Manner, a Finnish sculptor, mason, sculptor, artist, who in 2006 and 2008 created what is known as the Uranium-Free Finland series. So the early 2000s was a time when the global spot price of uranium was skyrocketing, and that brought a lot of international mining, for the first time, international mining companies to Finland to prospect for uranium. Very aggressive prospecting in basically like all parts of the country. So, as a reaction to these prospecting activities, a lot of local, regional anti-uranium mining social movements formed in different parts of the country. I showed you earlier, there's another map. Basically, like, there was an anti-uranium mining social movement in Kuusamo in northern Finland. There was an anti-uranium mining social movement in eastern Finland, and there were a couple of anti-uranium mining social movements in southern Finland. And these environmentalist activist movements commissioned Pessi Manner to create anti-uranium mining art, activist art, environmental art. So his reaction to these commissions was to create an artwork in each of the Finnish municipalities that were being like under threat of becoming uranium municipalities, like where these international mining companies were carrying out prospecting. And the objective, of course, was to raise public awareness of the like perceived and possible health and environmental risks of uranium mining, and in that way, like, create following to these movements, and that was a way to affect the political decisions that were being made regarding. For example, one of the big objectives was to change the mining law, and because it was considered like way too easy for mining companies to make claims and start a mine, even if the municipality in question was not in favor of that. So the mining law was super, like, it allowed this, granted a lot of opportunities to mining companies, so to say. So Pessi Manner created, there's a list of artworks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 3 of those are not directly connected to uranium mining, although they were made in the same time, around the same time. One, for example, was made as a thank you to a family that was housing him, housing him while he was creating one of these artworks. So this is what they look like. This is Luonto vastaa, Nature Response from 2006. It's a maybe 2 meters in what's this diameter? carved, or rather, so his method of creating these artworks was he had a diamond saw, electric diamond saw, that he used to cut into the bedrock and then chiseled away like parts of the. So this is the famous trefoil radiation warning sign in eastern Finland, close to the Paukkainvaara mine that was operational in the 50s. That's an area where a lot of uranium is, so that's where all the activities are like focused. Prospecting, mining, and anti-uranium movements and activities and interventions. This is Runo from 2008. It's a sun. So this is the like common motive in his art, the sun, and save for a couple of artworks, they're all of the artworks are like, most of them are like they have this sun. You make use of this sun motive. And to get a sort of idea of the impact of these artworks, what did they do like socially? What was the significance of these artworks to different anti-uranium mining interests? So in 2009, the local, this is again close to the Paukkainvaara mine, this is also in eastern Finland. The local congregation, the Lutheran congregation, held a prayer service, nature prayer service on this carving. This is from this quote from Pauliina Kainulainen, who reflects on the role of the church in these anti-uranium mining movements. So the location, the artwork, offered the perfect place for a nature prayer service with the theme of the Canticle of the Sun by Francis of Assisi, an Italian mystic and priest. I think the Canticle of the Sun, if you just Google it, you will find the lyrics, and it's I think it's from the 13th century, an Italian nature prayer, so to say. And this is an example of the sort of like involvement of different groups with different objectives when it comes, or different sort of rationalities when it comes to opposing uranium mining. So the church saw uranium mining as an abomination of the like the sacredness of nature, and in this sense, the local congregation also wanted to distance themselves from this. From this certain type of Christianity that sees nature as a resource and so on. But just an example of the different sort of sensibilities of dealing with, and also an example of how these artworks have become like how they are used by different groups with different interests. This is Päiviö, the northernmost one of his artworks. So it's located on top of a mountain in northern Finland. It's called Päiviö, and this was one of the only artwork in which Manner made a reference to the role of the Sami people in the mining disputes. So Päiviö is a reference to Beaivi, the Sami word for sun, and Beaivas, the Sami shaman and ruler of the sun, to whom offerings were made at midsummer. And it was revealed to the public on Midsummer Eve on 2007. So and I think this is one of the most like stunning. At least I visited it once when I like documented it, and it happened to the whole mountain happened to be covered in this thick mist. And as we were approaching the site, we saw like reindeers fleeing us. And then just like we spent a long time on that artwork, just magical. In some sense, it like really fit the sort of like mystique and enhance the mystique of this artwork. Okay, so now we approach the sort of archaeological. So far, this probably sounds a lot like art history, basically, rather than archaeology. But the sense that how I have drawn from archaeology, and especially theories on this northern circumpolar Neolithic rock art and rock paintings, is like theories on why these paintings were created in the first place, and what's the sort of like ontology behind or the cosmology behind creating them. And so you probably know a lot more about rock art than I do, but the like popular idea among rock art scholars is that, especially when it comes to this circumpolar northern rock paintings, is that they were created by people who held a certain like animistic idea or an animistic ontology regarding the landscape. Here you see clearly like the anthropomorphic shapes of the cliff in which these paintings are situated. So there's, on the one hand, there's this like animistic idea of the bedrock as a living thing, and on the other hand, another like element in these theories on rock art is that the images were created over a long period of time during like revisits to these sites. So it was important as the iconography of the art was that people interacted with the rock. So there were certain like characteristics that were important for why the art was placed in this or made in this place. For example, the echo, like how the cliff looks, how it echoes when you like interact with the place, and the materiality or the like material traits of the surface, like different grooves and how it feels and how it looks. So to me, like that's where I draw from in analyzing the anti-uranium. So there's this really long continuum of let's say that there's a continuum of animistic thinking behind the creation of art, the earliest art in this area, and then the later examples of creating rock art in this area. And so the idea is that through those revisits to those holy places and interacting with the rock, like touching it, the place was made important, and the whole landscape was made important. So that's sort of my idea in analyzing these artworks, that in creating the rock carvings, Pessi Manner was making the landscape important. Of course, it's not only this Neolithic animism that's like somehow alive in Pessi's art making, but also like later ideas of what landscape means to Finnishness, for example, because the uranium disputes, they were very much a matter of a force from outside Finland and Finnish local groups. So there's defending this landscape from the forces from outside. So there's a really strong sort of a really strong nationalism at play here. Those who have analyzed the anti-uranium mining movements from a political perspective and a resource political perspective, they refer to that as resource nationalism. So we, as Finns, maybe we might be entitled to extracting the uranium from the bedrock, but not the not the foreign forces, because they have no idea of what's important and worth protecting in our landscape. So this is an example from, again, the same area where the artworks that I earlier showed, where the nature prayer took place, the trefoil, the uranium mine of Paukkainvaara. This is all in the in that hotspot in eastern Finland. So this is maybe the most iconic landscape. If you Google Finnish landscape or Finnish national landscape of Finland, this is probably what will come up. So it's the Koli, it's called Koli, and this is basically what was at stake, what the local anti-uranium mining movements in eastern Finland were trying to protect. This is a representation of the nature values. This is a representation of the cultural values, of the economical values. Like there's an industry of tourism that's developed like around these values and these landscapes. So that's why we have to protect them. And of course, like this is also a landscape that has been sort of instilled into the like Finnish sort of mentality as a landscape of like what is like quintessential to Finnishness, or like being Finnish and protecting Finnish sort of national values. In a lot of art during the 1900s, this is a famous painting, again a view from Koli. You have references to Koli in literature and in music as well. So one can't like set this aside. It has to be taken into account when like analyzing the anti-uranium art and its sort of the objectives of creating that art and the impact of that art. So these are the like landscape, the elements of this landscape thinking that have to be taken into consideration. Okay, so first I said that I will have 3 case studies and a reconstruction of an artwork. This is a reconstruction of. This is not a reconstruction. Sorry, this is a picture of one of Manner's artworks. So this is again now a deviation from the sun theme. So this is joko vai. It's really hard to translate that into English, but it's like already or like either or. It's not really either or, but it doesn't really make sense in Finnish either, so don't pay attention to that. But it's Manner created this in 2006. It's a carving in the shape of the Maiden of Finland. So geographically, that's when you look at the map, that's what Finland is supposed to look like. And the waste, the rocks on this carving are meant to represent mining waste rock. So this is the future image of the dystopic image of like post uranium mining Finland filled with waste rock, and it's situated in a very steep like hill. What is it? Steep hill, yeah. Rock, like slope. Thank you. So the artist himself also wrote somewhere that it's like the raped maiden of Finland kicked like down from this like hill or something to that effect. And for a long time, like, I had no idea where this artwork is located. So it just kept like eluding me. And the only thing I had, or basically the only thing I have seen, and the only thing that like also people that I've talked to who were actually afterwards, it like turned out that there are people who know where it is. No surprise there. So, like, this is the only photographic evidence that exists from 2006, and like shows me what it might have looked like in 2006. This is located in southern Finland. So now we're moving south from eastern Finland. And I mentioned earlier that also in southern Finland there was like uranium mining activity in the already like one of the like mining hotspots is in southern Finland. And this is another like area where uranium was uranium ore was extracted, and the uranium ore was refined. So this is in that same area where this Jokovai artwork is located. So this is a uranium refinery from the late 50s. This is one of the quarries. This is what the quarry looks like today, or looked like last summer. So this is also an area where like the history of uranium mining and the like historical baggage of uranium mining is very much like in the collective consciousness of this area. And it was weird, like when I tried to like ask around, who knows, like where might this artwork be located? It felt like people didn't want to go there. It's like, let's not open that like Pandora's box. We don't want to like talk about this history. We don't like it's buried deep, and we don't want to relive this. So this is an area where in the 2000s there was an active anti-uranium mining social movement, and this is an artwork that was commissioned by that movement from Vessi Manner. So then last autumn, a local contact of mine like sent me pictures. I have located Jokovai, and it was just like a slope with just moss. I couldn't see anything. Like there's no artwork here. Like there are no rocks, there are no carvings. But when so she kept sending me pictures and say, yes, this is it. It's like clearly I can see it there. And then this summer I finally had the chance to go there and like see the thing myself. And it like, yeah, so that's actually Jokovai. So now we have found Jokovai. And what I could see there was just like in this steep slope again, like this faintly, like you can see that this is the northernmost part of this Maiden of Finland. But none of the rocks were like there. Just like we couldn't see any of the rocks. So what we did was we did a sort of an archaeological excavation at the site in order to find the rocks that supposedly were on that carving, and also to like reconstruct it. So quickly after the finding of this artwork, a decision was made with Manner's father. So Manner Pessi himself he died in 2015. So I never met him, I never talked to him. And all of this like information, also like the more intimate, like personal sort of aspects of his character and persona have come to me through Pessi's father and also other relatives and friends of Pessi Manner. So we made a decision to reconstruct the artwork, and then when we went to see the artwork, there were like no rocks, nothing to use to reconstruct it. So we organized this reconstruction and the excavation and the reconstruction of this artwork, and we did find the rocks. They were buried under like a thick layer of dirt and moss at the bottom of this steep slope. So all the rocks had during 18 years basically. They had everything had fallen down. So what we did was with the help of that one photograph from 2006, we reconstructed the artwork. And that's me using a power drill to make it more visible so that you could actually notice or see that it's the shape of the Maiden of Finland when you photograph it. So that's what it looks like in 2024. So in a sense, I have reclaimed this as an artwork of mine. So Jokovai 2006, Jokovai 2024, and so after we had reconstructed the artwork, we organized a public event or public reveal of the artwork. Again, very close to the actual location of the artwork. This is the local youth association, a house that belongs to the local youth association. They really went big on this. They organized they had coffee and cake and was it rhubarb pie and coffee and vanilla custard. It was really nice, and a lot of people showed up. People who had taken part in those the activist movements in 2006, and in that around that time, relatives of Pessi Manner, locals who were just interested in local matters. And so there were speeches. I gave a short presentation on my research on Manner's art. And then I don't have a picture of, there was a singer-songwriter performing her original songs, environmentalist songs. And so it was a really nice, nice event. 40 people, around 40 people in total. And then after all the coffee slurping and cake eating, we went to the actual location of the artwork. And this is some of the people just I don't know, some were impressed, but most were maybe unimpressed. It's not oh, it's that's what it looks like. That's the artwork. So, and that's Pessi's father, Juhana Manner, and he was really touched by this whole event, really emotional, really thankful for something that because Manner, when he was still alive and when he was creating these artworks, he thought that it would be forgotten and his art would be forgotten forever. And the most important sort of realization that came up during this event was that, and it was brought up by Juhana, that one can never fully anticipate the afterlives and effects of creating art, and once so the effects might be felt the effects might be greatly delayed in a sense. So it became a moment of remembering, in a sense revisiting this place. So there were people who were part of the original gang, the activists in 2006, around that time when the artwork was made. And one of them actually pointed out that Pessi never wanted he wanted the artwork to just disappear, disintegrate. And he would never have approved of this. And I was like, okay, well that's an interesting point. It also never came from Pessi and his father were never super close. He would always tell me that he never really knew where Pessi was. He just was like a drifter basically. So Pessi as well, just like Joko Vai, kept for a long time it was really hard for me to grasp the spirit of this artwork. And it's the same goes for Manner, Pessi Manner. But anyway, it was brought up that so there were these critical voices as well that it should be forgotten. In a sense, it fits what I kept hearing and what I kept hitting against when I was trying to find this artwork, and no one was really willing to talk about it. But so for me, the very act of revisiting this place and recreating the artwork and reconstructing it, it's in line with my what I do is in line of what I think. I guess it's a no-brainer, but I think that this type of revisiting a place is what makes the area and the landscape important. So to conclude, I have a couple of points on what this type of heritage, why it's important, or what also what are the future why it's important that it continues to live, and why it's important that it continues to be used and revisited. Is this certain ritualization and intensification of importance through this type of revisiting, whether it's every 20 years reconstruct this artwork. It's to me it's really in line also with the history of Finnish uranium production. In the 50s, a boom and a bust. In the 70s, late 70s, a boom and a bust. In 2000, a boom and a bust. And now, in 2024, Finland became the only EU member state, uranium-producing EU member state, when Terrafame, the mining company, began collecting of uranium from its flow of ore at a mine in northern Finland. So there's this 20-year generation. Each generation experiences this boom and bust, hopeful mining boom, and then its opposition, and that's to me is the basis of revisiting in a historical sense. Every 20 years, maybe we should revisit this history and these sites. And I think that Manner, what he did was this he was instilling hope into the bedrock in a sense. And another important aspect to keeping up this environmentalist hope is monuments like this that continue to document and also communicate with the future these contradictions that are inherent to nuclear power, and the naturalness and unnaturalness, or environmental friendliness and environmental unfriendliness. So these are really complicated questions, and a monument like this, I don't think it's important that it communicates with the future a list of like guilty parties, or like these are the people that should be shamed for years to come. But the very fact that because it continues to collect this sort of shifting ideologies and politics and the sort of contradictions of nuclear power, it communicates with the future this like a promise of continued political effort and activist effort rather than like solutions to problems per se. So that's the perpetual like promise, and in a way like revisiting again the like sort of promise of continued effort rather than solutions. That's what I find really important when it comes to this type of monuments. And this sort of like hope aspect is my now next project, ongoing project. Like I'm looking into like how certain elements of and principles of hope are visible in this type of art, especially in like this type of heritage that like was intentionally aimed at communicating with the future, how hope, elements or aspects of hope manifest in this type of art. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And a presentation that mixes art, archaeology, and uranium. Are there any questions or comments from the audience?
Hi. Bit of an obvious question. Marko, thank you very much, first of all. How has this project made you reconsider archaeology, as in trying to assess the past?
Uranium, like I should point towards this article that's forthcoming in Routledge this archaeological orientations series, Yellow Cake, a performative anarchaeology of uranium, in which I collaborated with Thea Andreoletti, who is an Italian artist, and in her art, Thea has like researched Italian anti-uranium mining activism in the 1970s. And so we collaborated on, and Yellow Cake is a participatory performance that sort of recollects these memories of uranium mining's opposition. And what we mean with like anarchaeology, it's this like sort of like twist on like what's his name? Archaeology of knowledge. Foucault. Thank you. Foucault uses this anarchaeology as a concept in like as a development of his archaeology of knowledge, and so it in a way it becomes this like what uranium has made me realize about archaeology is the like seeming impossibility of like researching archaeologically something, like the challenge of how can archaeology, maybe not like it hasn't given me like answers, but rather presented challenges, like how can archaeology respond to this challenge of like researching archaeologically something that escapes archaeological attention. And this like realization comes from like visiting a uranium mine that's been rehabilitated. So by law, it would be illegal to dig into the like mine. I can't research archaeologically the history of that mine. So I have to somehow like switch my archaeological like thinking away from being able to excavate to being like excavating the sort of like, so in a way it becomes history, but at the same time, like how can I understand through historical records the nature of a place that sort of like I cannot penetrate the layers of that, the protective layers that were laid on that site. So the whole like this project has become a project of like thinking archaeology from this perspective of an archaeology, like doing archaeology in a way that is not archaeological by any measure to most archaeologists. And like a disclaimer, like I'm the worst field archaeologist. So I would like when I said that we conducted excavations on this artwork, I don't want to show you any of the photographic evidence of us like butchering and the tools that we use, like you would laugh. So also maybe like how maybe for the first time I've like become confident of the way that I do archaeology, and I can like proudly like call myself an archaeologist. I don't have to know how to like excavate by the like all the like according to the definition of an archaeological, like scientific archaeological excavation, but there's like life finds its way type of like sort of I have learned to trust my own like sense of orientation when it comes to archaeology and doing my own like version of archaeology. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a convoluted sort of monologue on archaeology and non-archaeology, how to do archaeology and not archaeology at the same time, if it makes any sense.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I very much liked how you kind of played upon the Stone Age rock art as well, and you had this sentence that I just loved, to make a kind of like a defense in sanctity. And I wonder, because you're talking about also hope, which I think is a kind of like a future perspective, kind of like projecting hope into the future. And also this, you know, the burial of this that could last for hundreds of thousands of years. Do you think that this hope in the artworks, and I don't know, it's just this kind of like dualism with also like the longevity of the waste. I just wondered if you have any like comments on that, or any like, yeah, because it is very much a future thing. So also kind of playing on what you just said, because we are archaeologists, but now we're very concerned actually about the future. So just wondering about
maybe that's another aspect that's like it's really become clear to me, like in what sense can we talk about an archaeology of the future, an archaeology that is like relevant for the future. And one of my professors has like she has this like almost like a slogan that future heritage is a tautology. Like it's a like heritage is also always about the future. Like it's by definition about the future. But what an archaeological sort of take on this type of heritage has like revealed to me that there's heritage that is like genuinely future heritage. Like it's meant to communicate with the future. And when it comes to, for example, when it comes to Manner's artworks, another like critical voice that's been like presented is that Manner was effectively marking deposits of like uranium deposits for future miners. Like this is how it could be like interpreted in the future. And that's maybe an aspect to like keep in mind. Also, when it comes to the like the iconography of like the art, the sun motif, for example, it's been like historically like shown that the sun can be like a symbol for an energy source of any kind, not just like, of course, for Manner it's about like solar power and like we should rely on solar power rather than nuclear power. But again, just like the memorial for selfishness keeps like playing on this like contradictions of nuclearity in the widest sense, like considering the technological aspects and the political aspects and the economical aspects and the environmental aspects, like it continues to like communicate this sort of like challenge that there aren't any easy answers. There aren't any like, even when examined like in a very like narrow time frame, you don't really have easy answers to all of these like questions and challenges. So just like the memorial to selfishness like communicates with the future that sort of like struggle, which is then the like source of hope, this sort of like promise, very modest promise of continued effort, that historically like, okay, there's hope, there's the miners' hope, and then there's the activists' hope. Both are like motivated by hope of finding uranium, and then what I argued that like Manner was doing the like an inversion of that, like instilling hope into the bedrock. So again, like in the future, how will people interpret these sun motifs as? Will they interpret them as energy sources or signs of like anti-uranium activism? I don't know. That's one of the like. If you Google nuclear semiotics, you will find a lot of stuff on this, like future communication aspects of nuclearity and nuclear power and nuclear waste. Like, how do we like? It's all about like scale and time frames. Like, 20 years. In 20 years, we will probably know that this is an anti-uranium mining artwork. But how about 100 years or 200 years or 10,000 years? Or like, this is the challenge of communicating with the future. Also the location of these like cheap geological repositories and the nature of those sites, when all like natural languages have changed and forgotten, and like who is it that's going to be dealing with that waste 100,000 years from now? So that's really like, how can archaeology then, this is what like happened in the 80s and 90s, when in the US they were like the Department of Energy was planning the construction of these geological repositories. The Department of Energy actually hired archaeologists and anthropologists and linguists and material scientists to solve these issues, because archaeological knowledge, or the way of like of doing archaeology of the past, can be inverted to like apply to the archaeology of the future. So that's another example of how and why archaeology can be relevant also for the future. But yeah.
Thank you.
This is less of a question and more of an interesting thought I just had. In that one of his carvings was of the classical sort of symbol of radioactivity, but several of the others were similar to sun symbols. And what you were talking about now, how the sort of what they will symbolize in the future. And I was just imagining that far, far, far in the future, maybe they will begin to associate, or maybe they will interpret the radioactive symbol as a sun symbol because it is circular and it sort of radiates out. And of course, there is no way of knowing that, but it is interesting that today we associate that. I would definitely say that I see those clear sun symbols as something other and something maybe in opposition to the radioactive. Like one of them is harmonic, good energy, and one of them is very ambivalent, sort of scary. How maybe with time they will converge more into having similar associations.
Yeah.
Or of course I don't know, but
Curiously, there's one of Manner's carvings combines those. So there's the sun, and there's a tiny, like this size, like trefoil, and one of the rays of the sun is like cutting a wing of the trefoil. And those were like early. I think he made this large trefoil first, then created the one with the small, or the other way around. But those two artworks are the earliest ones. And then he drops this trefoil altogether, and all of the remaining ones are like Joko Vai, the Maiden of Finland, or then exclusively the sun. So he really like went with the sun towards the end of this Uranium-Free Finland series.
Okay, thank you. And although your paper is very much about long-term stretches of time, I think we have to wrap it up for tonight. And thank you for the lecture and visiting us. And it seems that we can continue discussions after we officially close this session event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our audience as well.